Let's start with a simple question. Did the CIA really use psychic spies? You know the answer, which we found in the government's own declassified files. Well, it sends you down a rabbit hole so deep, it makes you question just about everything. And believe me, psychic spies are just the beginning.
What about spy cats? And yeah, I am being 100% serious right now. It sounds like something straight out of a cartoon, but as we're about to find out, the reality that the government has declassified is honestly way weirder than any fiction you could ever write. So let's dive right in. We are going to peel back the curtain on some of the government's most unbelievable, most mind-bending secret projects. And I want to be crystal clear about this. Everything you're about to see comes directly from official, declassified documents. This isn't some conspiracy theory. This is actual, documented history. Okay, we're going to start our journey with a story that, honestly, it perfectly captures the wild imagination and, let's be real, the sometimes very questionable judgment of Cold War-era intelligence. Everyone, meet Acoustic Kitty. Yep, that was its real name. Back in the 1960s, the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology poured millions of dollars into a project to turn an ordinary house cat into a high-tech listening device. The plan was to surgically implant a tiny microphone in its ear canal, a transmitter at the base of its skull, and then just let it loose near Soviet compounds. What could possibly go wrong?
So how did this genius plan work out in the field? Oh, not well. Not well at all. The project's very first field test was a complete disaster. See, after they released the cat from a van, the cat, being a cat, immediately got distracted, wandered out into the middle of the street, and was instantly hit by a taxi. Mission over. Project shut down.
But, not all of these secret programs were as comically bad as Acoustic Kitty. Some of them crossed a really dark line, from just bizarre into genuinely sinister, and involved some truly unethical experiments on citizens who had no idea what was happening to them.
And that brings us to the infamous Project MKUltra. For 2 entire decades, the CIA was running this top-secret research program looking for the key to mind control. The declassified documents proved that they were giving drugs like LSD to people, often people who had absolutely no clue they were part of an experiment. All of this in an effort to try and weaponize the human mind itself. And to really grasp just how far they took this, you have to hear about one of its sub-projects, Operation Midnight Climax. The CIA literally set up and ran brothels in San Francisco and New York. Agents would dose unsuspecting men with LSD, and then they'd watch what happened from behind one-way glass. It is a truly chilling example of just how far the agency was willing to go.
And the scheming didn't stop with mind control. In 1962, the Department of Defense actually drew up plans for something called Operation Northwoods. This was a formal proposal to commit acts of terrorism on American soil. We're talking hijacking planes, bombing cities, and then blame it all on Cuba just to create public support for a war. Now, the plan was ultimately rejected by President Kennedy, thank goodness. But the fact that it was ever seriously proposed in the first place is just staggering.
A lot of what we now know about these dark chapters comes from the CIA's own internal audit, which they nicknamed the Family Jewels. It was finally declassified in 2007, and this nearly 700-page document is basically a laundry list of the agency's most illegal and questionable activities. Everything from assassination plots against leaders like Fidel Castro to illegally spying on American journalists and activists. But the government's secrets weren't just confined to covert plots here on Earth. For decades, while the CIA was busy with these dark ops, a whole other part of the government was staring up at the sky, trying to get a handle on the UFO phenomenon. The government's official relationship with UFOs has always been, well, complicated. It started with pretty dismissive investigations like Project Grudge, which then evolved into the more famous and systematic Project Blue Book. But then, things took a weird turn. In 1953, a panel sponsored by the CIA actually recommended a national policy of debunking UFO reports, not to find the truth, but specifically to manage public perception and prevent what they called mass hysteria. And the scale of what they were looking into was just immense. Over 17 years, Project Blue Book officially cataloged over 12,000 sightings. And while, they explained away most of them, hundreds and hundreds of cases remained officially classified as unidentified. And if you dig into these investigation files, you find some truly wild stuff. This quote right here is from the Hoddle Memo, an internal FBI document from 1950. It describes crashed saucers in New Mexico with, quote, bodies of human shape but only 3 feet tall. Now, the FBI later said this was just a rumor they'd recorded, but when it was released to the public, it basically created the entire modern UFO legend.
So what if the government's interest in the unknown went even beyond UFOs? What if it went into the very fabric of human consciousness itself? Well, this brings us to what might just be the strangest declassified program of them all.
For more than 20 years, the Pentagon and the CIA spent millions of dollars on something called the Stargate Project. And its goal? Well, to see if psychic phenomena, things like ESP, could actually be used for military intelligence. They were, in essence, trying to create a real-life army of psychic spies.
The main technique they were studying was called remote viewing, and the process was pretty straightforward. A psychic, or viewer, would be given a sealed envelope with nothing but a set of geographic coordinates inside. They'd then go into a meditative state and try to describe, or even sketch, what was happening at that secret target using only their mind.
But they didn't just target, Soviet missile silos. To give you an idea of just how far out they took this, listen to this. In one session, from 1984, the remote viewer was given coordinates for a very specific place in time, 1 million years in the past, on the planet Mars.
And the results? Well, they were extraordinary. The declassified transcript from that session describes massive pyramids, giant, strange structures, and a very tall, thin race of beings who were facing some kind of apocalyptic climate disaster. I mean, it's a government document that reads like pure science fiction.
So what's the legacy of all this? What's the fallout? These strange, sinister, and just plain otherworldly projects weren't just weird footnotes in history. They've had a really profound and lasting impact on our culture, and maybe more importantly, on our trust in the very institutions that were running them.
The stories from these declassified files have totally seeped into our collective imagination. The psychic spies of the Stargate Project? That directly inspired the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats. Rumors about a secret program called the Montauk Project helped fuel the creation of Stranger Things. And MKUltra, well, that's been the basis for countless conspiracy thrillers. It turns out reality was the source code for some of our favorite fiction.
When you really look at all these documents together, one thing becomes incredibly clear. For decades, operating deep in the shadows of national security, our own government was exploring ideas so bizarre they sound like they were ripped from the pages of a novel. And all of this leads to one final, unavoidable question. These stories of spy cats, mind control, psychic missions to Mars, these are the secrets that they chose to declassify. It really makes you wonder, what secrets are still out there, waiting in the dark?